Now, as Vasily said, I happen to be a philosopher. Now, some of you here might begin thinking, what's going on? What that guy wants among us? Now, I have to warn you here that my profession and my training allows me to ask questions about everything and answers questions about nothing. So, please bear with me. What I'm going to talk today is that I'm interested in ruins, and particularly about a distinction that has become very prevalent in the last decade or the last 2 decades. And I start my trip through ruins starting from Diderot, when Diderot points out that what actually is important about us and ruins is first and foremost that something about time, that ruins resist time, can actually fight against time. And this gives him the opportunity to begin thinking that, well, what's really the relationship between ourselves and ruins when actually crumbling stones are there forever, whereas human beings tend to go much faster. But if we leave Diderot behind, my main interest is to talk about this distinction between new ruins and old ruins, and reminding ourselves that actually we do live in very interesting, however painful times. So the first part of the talk, I'm going to talk about the distinction. Then on the second part, I'm going to talk about the sense of familiarity that I will explain. This is what brings us closer to our understanding of new ruins. And at the end, I'm going to propose an idea about how we can pay our respects, how we can fulfill our obligations towards the treatment of new ruins. And we can take actually this further even to old ruins. First things first, though. Okay, new ruins. What you see here is what I understand as new and old ruins. Old ruins, as you see here, is Inca monuments at the top of the city of Cusco. The photograph I took myself a few years ago when I was there for the International Committee Ecological Heritage meeting. New ruins, is a photograph from the great city of Detroit. And this is a picture from a great site and book, The Empire of Ruins. And here also you have new ruins and old ruins. Now somebody will say, what's the distinction? Well, that's a ruin, has resisted the time. What the Taliban has left is some rubble that actually, broadly speaking, can be understood as ruin. Now, if we compare this site and the previous scene, I'm interested far more on this distinction between new and old ruins. And I employ a distinction between what I understand as ruin scene and RuneScape. Now, with the term ruin scene, I refer to new ruins. And see what is different, what is great about them, or what actually are the main characteristics of them. So ruin scenes have to do with ruins that are products of modernity, are products of our recent past. So that's one feature. Second feature, contemporary ruins, or new ruins, actually have this sense of being abandoned. And here you see ruins from small business enterprises in Greece during the current financial crisis. So that's something that not many of us would actually go and visit, like other great ruins we saw in Rome, or you will see in Elefsis, or somewhere in Athens. Or what you can see, again from this great part of Detroit, that these kind of ruins, the new ruins, are ephemeral. There's something trivial about them. There is nothing there about the glory of time, thinking about what these great people made. We don't feel any sense of sublime or greatness about this kind of vision here. What other kind of ruin scenes we have? Again, we do not find this abandoned and left cinema at the city of Detroit as aesthetically pleasant. We heard before from Vasilis and from Roberto that ruins has this kind of great ideas about ought to be poetic, ought to be attractive. I'm not sure that many of us would run to this place and feeling ecstatic about what we've seen. So are they aesthetically unpleasant, and to what extent? What else is ruin scenes here? Have a sense of destroyal. It's something about the destroy of ruin scenes, something that it's happening right here now. destruction in front of our eyes. And although people in the literature like my great friend Cornelius Holthoff have argued that destruction is part of what might need to be kept instead of the whole thing, we understand this kind of distinction as something that used to be actually admired, whereas this as something that we find rather revolting, rather disgusting as a view. But why? We'll find out in a while. So this is what I understand as ruin scenes. Let's compare them now to what I understand as RuneScapes. So here you have. Now RuneScapes, at least as far as I understand them, were firstly created by the great Grand Tour travelers, great rich gentlemen that were sent by the painting teachers to go to find out the perfect aesthetic forms, where in Italy and much later in Greece. So that's a famous Dodwell picture from the ruins of Athens. And this is where the whole idea of the tidy ruinscape, something that UNESCO would love to believe that this is the great ideas about the heritage of humanity, particularly the fabric of the building, and not too much surrounded by it. But what about this? So ruinscapes are created by the gaze of the tourist. So as I don't think I'm an expert to talk about the Roman forums here, but being a great friend of Italy and Rome, anytime I have visited, I cannot stop taking pictures of this kind of thing. So my gaze as a tourist is attracted by this thing, and I spread it, say, by Instagram or Pinterest, and I create a ruinscape that is there perpetually forever via social media. I'm not sure that I would do the same with something which is not so tidy. What about this? Is the gaze of the visitor. That's the famously first ever photo taken of the ruins of Acropolis, the late 19th century. And this is the visitor gave the first ever photo that was used either for projects or for people understanding what they visit. Again, a very set, almost tidy, selected idea. This is probably what ruinscapes are. Also is the gaze of the artist, that imagination about how the old and far away things from the past look like, gave a representation of the artist. And you might find out people that will say, well, you know, I see that great picture by Lawrence Alma Tadema. Where does Pericles speak here? And you say, well, it's a little bit far away, and probably we'll see some dustbins down there. Probably Pnica is opposite. I'm not sure if you fit enough under 40 degrees Celsius to visit the place. However, if this is what you think that old ruins are all about, more than welcome to explore. What else is there about ruinscapes? Is again, they are curated, selected, highlighted places, that Inca water springs on the top of the Cusco city, greatly visited after some restoration. They are conserved. How much of this part of the Colosseum is real is something to discuss. Probably authentic, somebody would say, but it's still something that is more tidy, more attractive. And of course, they are preserved. They recently opened again site of the Clock of the Winds at the Roman Forum at the city center of Athens, where actually you can see there is some sense of preservation, something that has been there in some kind of order, that keeps the distance between us and what used to happen in the past. What else? Well, here is so far as we can talk about the distinction between ruinscapes and ruin scenes. So, in a nutshell, ruin scenes have to do with new ruins that we think we have some sense of familiarity, whereas ruinscapes are far more tidy understanding of ruins, a perception of ruins as well. So, let me now explain to you why I think that ruin scenes have a sense of familiarity for us. Because there is something about our ruin scenes that have to do with the intangible things that are necessarily related to structures and to things from the past. So, let's move here. What does it mean really to be familiar in that sense? For anyone who do not know, this great building is a building located next to the German Institute of Archaeology at the city center of Athens at Phidias Street. I've been lucky enough, any time I visit Athens, to have a desk at the reading room there. And when I want to talk with a friend, there is a coffee shop that looks just opposite to this great relic building, which is dirty and full of dustbins under it. Somehow, any time I'm there, I feel I'm a participant of the process of these deteriorations. 5 years ago, the wooden plaques were not used to be there. And I'm an observer of getting this even worse and worse and worse. And people, that they're looking at it, they don't even pay attention. By doing or by not doing things, we are both participants and contributors of the ruins of today, whether we like it or I'm afraid we don't. What else? What else does it mean to be familiar? We are participants in the social conditions which have shaped contemporary ruins. That's a fantastic building. What it is, it's, first and foremost, it's at least I visited this building when I was still a student at the University of Athens. That used to be the famous Atticon Cinema. Now, as a building, it says a heck of a lot of the story of the capital of Athens and the middle class of Athens. That's one of the very first theatres / operas where the Prime Minister, Venizelos, in the beginning of the 20th century, invited a French architect to create a place where the new and building up Greek Athenian middle class will find a place to socialize, meet, and probably find future husbands and wives. So, for this kind of building, this building actually was burned down. I don't want to talk about the details of the burning down, during one of the protests of the current financial crisis in Athens a few years ago. So for a building like this, for a ruin like this, our knowledge of the past is not fragmented, it's sufficient. And it will be great at the end of the restoration of this building if we get all part of its histories and stories and narrations that different people have had. I'll be happy to say the first one, whom I met or have not met, or whom I was waiting or not waiting, coming out of the cinema in which movie. And at the same time, with ruin scenes, we have a sense of familiarity of time. With things that are closer to us, we are partial. We cannot be objective and observe. We feel closer, and that's only normal. Okay, so let's not forget that for things that are happening now, we have some more sense of developed association, and somehow we can feel our interdependence. Please keep the term interdependence for what comes after. So, what does it mean to be familiar? Somehow, we are participants in the same set of values that created or have not created certain kinds of ruins. What you will see here is that a great old house of the late 19th century, if I remember well, which is at the corner of Oulu and Voreou Street at the city center of Athens. Now, what you will see here at Eolu is one of the great streets that from wherever you are, you can look directly at the Acropolis. However, part of that street was some great buildings of like this, that the greedy developers in the 60s, when the greatest, for me at least, murder of architecture and taste happened in Athens in the 60s and the 70s, you got rid of these buildings and you have the monstrosities that actually surround it. I was born after 1975, so somehow I'm participating in the values that actually have left this kind of monstrosity to be there. And also, these kind of buildings and these kind of ruins are lived and get meaning by the people that are there, and at the same time, the lives of the people get a meaning and understanding and representation by the building as well at the same time. And this is that interconnection, that interdependence that we need to take into consideration when we think about the things from the recent past or the long past. And again, familiarity with new ruins and old ruins. That's one of my favorite pictures. And I'm pretty annoyed that when I was a student at the Greek schools, I was never given that picture when people talked about the Greek refugees from the Minor Asia disaster in 1922. This is a digital picture I took from the Digital Museum of Smyrna, New Smyrna in Athens, which opened in 2016, I think. And what is this? Basically, it's a camp of the new Greek immigrants from 1920 outside the temple of Theseus, Hephaestus, at the Agora of Athens. So you have new ruins, which is the ruins, the life of ruins of these people, in front of new ruins, of the old ruins. And this is how actually there are many stories to be told, not only for the new, but also for the old ruins as well. And this is the sense of familiarity, because We are far more relevant to the new ruins than to the old ones, but we tend to focus more to the old and forget the new somehow. Well, at least this is what I think. So, what does it mean to be familiar? Familiar is that somehow we need to begin thinking what we're going to do with the new ruins. Destruction places that have left empty spaces. What kind of decisions we're going to take about disasters that we can talk about. It's not just a faraway earthquake, it's something that the international community is fully aware. And there should be an open talk about what kind of obligations we have, not only to future generations, but to past generations. And past generations, I mean here for the Valley of the Bamiyan Buddhas, the people who used to live 20, 30 years ago, and they told stories to the grandchildren about the statues being there. At the same time, these kind of people, their lives got a meaning because they're independent with the ruins, and actually the ruins themselves got a different kind of life by actually being lived by these people. So, where does this leave me? It leads me to an idea to talk about one of my favorite ethical concepts, which is the concept of care. Now, funnily enough, archaeologists or architects or urban developers, when they talk about care, they talk about the idea of Heidegger. But I would like to actually talk about care as an ethical context, as an ethical concept, which is actually relevant to the analytic philosophy and actually feminist ethics. Why care? I tend to believe that the ethics of care is the best candidate to support our duty of care for new ruins, because care is based on the ideas of interdependence and vulnerability. Now, both interdependence and vulnerability are applicable to new ruins because new ruins signify our interdependence with each other and conditions of contemporary reality, and like old ruins, are vulnerable to decay, destruction, and misrepresentation. Now, this figure, which you can find out in one of my publications in 2016 about museums, ruins, and heritage, illustrates how the triangular framework operates. So, our duty of care is defined by care which is grounded on vulnerability and interdependence. According to the model, stewards' discretionary powers are defined by the vulnerability of what is entrusted to them at any time, and by exploring, of course, the biography of ruins in their care. And here you can add a developed sense of familiarity. Now, this is exactly what informs the stewards of the limits of the discretionary powers and highlights that there is more to ruins than their material composition. Stewards negotiate, and this is, I think, the most important part for me, the transfer of ruins' significance. That significance, in its multiple forms, is revealed by its biography. And negotiation is the ethical catalyst for duty of care for new ruins because it's not limited to mere awareness of the concerns of different beneficiaries and stakeholders. It is a process that takes into consideration how these different parties are involved in the transit of new ruins from past to future, given that they shape what ruins are and what they can be or what they might be in the future. So, to pull the threads of what I try to do together here, I talked about the distinction between ruin scenes and RuneScapes, and I tried to defend the claim that this is what actually highlights the distinction between new ruins on one hand, old ruins on the other. Why we feel the way we do about new ruins, let alone aesthetics, it's because familiarity plays a role in how we craft an interdependent relationship with new ruins. And I finally argue that given the link between care and interdependence, the ethics of care can be the best tool or the most adequate tool to actually serve any stewardship or trusteeship ethical decision model about what we owe to things from the past and to the relationship they have with the people. However, given that what follows is a session at the end of today of questions, when important visitors visit ruins and they try to get their own stamp on what these ruins are or can be for the future, here are some questions for you. Is reconstruction the same for both and old new ruins? Where does authenticity hide in new ruin? Because there is no talk about authenticity in new ruins, or some people think it is. Does the distinction between new and old challenge of how we perceive heritage monuments? Is there a pressure to pay closer attention to the intangible heritage of new ruins? What's the role of tourists for the reconstruction and preservation of new ruins? That places like this probably have the smell of the factory that not many people are happy to go. And finally, what new ruins would be or become prevalent without social media? You will see much more things about social media, about new ruins, than the old ruins. And with this note, I would like to thank you, referring to this great, actually, picture, one of the greatest museums I've ever seen, which is the Museum of Thermoelectric Station al Capitolino in Rome, where you will see great old statues in front of well-preserved industrial heritage. Thank you very much for your attention.